Hey guys, and welcome back to Utility Sports. If you do like NFL draft content, this is the place to subscribe. It's absolutely free to you. We really think that you should subscribe so you continue to get our NFL draft content. Also, check the link in our description below. We have merchandise that you can also buy, utility sports gear. Also, leave a like on the video if you do enjoy what you see in this mock draft. It's really crucial to us to see that you are liking the content that we are putting out. So number one, we have Jacksonville. Obviously, they won the Trevor Lawrence sweepstakes. We know where they're going to go with this selection. Sheldon, do you think they are going Lawrence?
Yeah, Lawrence is going to be the easy and obvious choice for the Jacksonville Jaguars. They're not going to think twice about it. He will be a Jacksonville Jaguar at the end of the day, and it's perfect for them. You're getting a guy who's going to maybe turn the direction of that franchise around. You're looking at a 10 to 15-year investment on arguably the best college prospect we've seen since Andrew Luck, and possibly could be better than Andrew Luck. We're looking at a team that has desperately needed a franchise savior at that quarterback position. Their best franchise QB ever was Mark Brunell. And now you're looking at a big improvement, a guy who's standing at 6'6", can really feel out the pocket, can deliver on the move, strong arm. He has all the traits you're really looking for. And I think the Jacksonville Jaguars are getting a good one here at 1.
Absolutely. Now we move on to the New York Jets. Obviously, they have some questions. Do they want to keep Sam Darnold? Do they want to build around him? Do they want to replace him? Do they want to trade down? Obviously, in this mock draft, we will not be making trades. So what's the best option if they stick here at 2?
Yeah, sticking here at 2 is kind of tough for them because of all the needs, like you had mentioned. Trading down would be the best route for GM Joe Douglas there and the New York Jets. But sticking at 2, I think it really comes down to about 2 players. It's whether or not they feel like Justin Fields is a big improvement over Sam Darnold, or whether or not they want to build with the tackles and grab Penei Sewell. To me, I think they're going to grab Penei Sewell at this point. I think Fields has been a little too shaky over the last few games. And I think that Sewell here at 2 is a huge improvement for them over that right tackle spot where George Fant's playing. And you get a lot stronger on that offensive line. You get to protect Sam Darnold, the player who has been injured every single year of his career since being drafted. So now getting Sewell gives you that franchise tackle across from Becton. That's really going to be the building block for the New York Jets. Looking at them historically, when they had their success, they've been strong in the trenches. DeBrickashaw, Ferguson, Nick Mangold, for example. And now you get to do that. Maybe they come back and grab an interior offensive lineman later in the draft as well.
Yeah, I like the Sewell pick. I think it really makes a lot of sense for the New York Jets to do so. Obviously, grabbing one of the best players available. He arguably is the best player available at that spot. Now we have Miami, who is number 3. Once again, they jumped with the Texans' loss to the Bengals. Really, really surprising to ultimately see that because they do own the Texans' pick. So where do you think they'll go at 3?
Yeah, this is really the interesting thing. This is the highest we've seen the Miami Dolphins this year. Obviously, the Texans have dropped a few straight in a row now here, and the Dolphins are going to reap the benefits of that, falling at 3. And I think the obvious pick here at this point is now Micah Parsons. You get another linebacker that fits Brian Flores' style. He's going to play alongside Kyle Van Noy, and you really strengthen the interior of that defense right up the middle. That's something that's going to be scary for the league. The Dolphins are already a really good team. They're going to be a playoff team this year more than likely. And now you get to add a top 3 player in the class, in my opinion, with Micah Parsons. The guy jumps off the screen to you when you watch him. Sideline to sideline, can rush the passer, can do a wide variety of things. And I think that Miami's getting a really, really good player that fits their scheme and fits their need at this point in the draft.
Really, really unfortunate that he was an opt-out this season. He would have been really fun to watch. One of the best players in the nation, once again, just dominating the Big Ten. So I do like the selection of Micah Parsons here at number 3. Now we move to Atlanta, which they have a lot of questions. They don't have a head coach currently. They don't have a general manager currently. So where do you think they're going to go under the assumption that they keep Matt Ryan?
Yeah, the Atlanta Falcons are quite an interesting situation here. And under the assumption that Matt Ryan is staying around, I don't even think that really rules out the quarterback position at this point. You're looking at a team that, with Justin Fields falling here to 4, that could be an option that they look at. Obviously, in past mocks, we've been mocking an edge rusher to them. And don't get me wrong, that makes a lot of sense. That's their biggest team need in my estimation. But they've been doing that for years past with players like Vic Beasley, Tack McKinley. It just hasn't quite panned out. We'll see which direction they go with their new front office, new head coach that they end up choosing. But at this point, I'm going to mock Justin Fields to them here at 4. A little bit of a surprise pick, not something we fully expected coming in. But Fields going here gives them a long-term replacement option to Matt Ryan. It depends on who the GM is. I'm fully aware of that. It depends on what they feel about Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan could stay. You maybe let Justin Fields sit for a year, and then you kind of reevaluate after that first season. I really like that fit. I think Justin Fields needs some time to develop before really getting some run in the NFL. And now we're going to see that here with the Atlanta Falcons.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. I think that is an interesting idea. I think that's not something that a lot of people are considering, but with the aging Matt Ryan, having a backup quarterback like Fields, let him develop for a couple of years. He's a guy that very well could need it. He has a lot of the physical tools that you like, but you'd like to see the mental game speed up. And obviously him sitting would help him do that. Now we're here at 5 with Philadelphia. Obviously they have a couple of needs that are interesting at the very top: linebacker, safety, corner, wideout. Obviously they've had some ups and downs throughout the entire season. Now they have Jalen Hurts as their quarterback and will likely be their quarterback moving forward. Where do you have the Eagles going?
Yeah, it's going to be all about making Jalen Hurts work. The Carson Wentz debacle has really kind of set back that franchise. Obviously came off a loss to the Dallas Cowboys this past week, and they just haven't really been able to get anything going. So I think they're going to really focus on getting a weapon for him. This is something we've mocked now for a couple weeks in a row, and it just makes the most sense at this point here at 5. Jamar Chase out of LSU. A dynamic route runner, guy who can really get his own in the short to intermediate routes consistently. Maybe not the most athletic player in the draft by any means, but you're looking at a guy who's going to be an elite weapon. We've seen what Justin Jefferson has done in the NFL this year, and Jamar Chase was more successful with Joe Burrow than Justin Jefferson was. Jamar Chase is going to be an absolute weapon for Jalen Hurts. He's going to be able to create separation, something that the Eagles wide receivers have really failed to do, especially when Deshaun Jackson doesn't play. So now Jamar Chase coming in, he's going to be that number 1 receiver on day 1. Maybe Jalen Reagor can take some steps forwards as well. And you're looking at a pretty solid 1-2 combination there for years to come in Philadelphia for Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, I think it's interesting with this selection. You have 2 different play styles. You have Reagor, who can really take the top off the defense. And then Jamar Chase, like you said, short to intermediate. That's where he lives ultimately in his routes. So I think that's a really, really good fit for the Eagles. Now at number 6, we have Cincinnati. Obviously, they have fallen due to their win against the Texans, which was a really weird thing to see happen. But now they're sitting here at 6. They don't have Penei Sewell on the board. What direction do you see them going? Because that was their number 1 guy on their board, very likely throughout this, pretty much this entire process. We could get that tackle, but now we're sitting here at 6. He's not available.
Yeah, the loss of Penei Sewell for the Bengals here is something definitely felt. They needed to go get an offensive tackle, but here at 6, I don't see them reaching on one. Possible trade down spot at this point, in my opinion, but obviously in this mock, we're not doing trade downs. So I think ultimately they're going to come out and grab an edge. I think Gregory Rousseau out of Miami is going to be the selection. He's an athlete. He can get off the edge well. And they need to replace Carlos Dunlap, who they moved on from this year. They need to really improve that defense as a whole as well. Obviously, some of their cornerbacks have been hurt this year. Trey Waynes, Mackenzie Alexander. I think with them coming back and playing full time, they'll be a little bit better. But their linebacking group needs to take a step forward. Their pass rush needs to definitely improve. And I think Gregory Rousseau is a good building block for them, especially since they're not going to be able to get Penei Sewell in this draft more than likely now with where they sit.
Yeah, I don't think Bengal fans should be super, super disappointed because Gregory Rousseau is still a very nice prospect. Obviously, he was phenomenal at Miami. But looking at what they really wanted, you wanted to get that tackle for Joe Burrow and replace Hart at the right tackle spot, or move Jonah Williams to right tackle and then Sewell to left tackle. But that doesn't work out here. You have to get an edge rusher if you're Cincinnati at this spot. They obviously have a couple of other needs like corner and wideout, but I think edge is pretty pressing as well. So we are going to go with Gregory Rousseau. Now we're here at number 7. We have the Detroit Lions. Obviously, the front 7 has had a lot of struggles this year. They've had some surprising players like Romeo Okwara, but ultimately they do need some front 7 help. They also could look at addressing wide receiver. This really depends on what happens with Matthew Stafford. We've had this conversation a lot. What's going to happen with Matt Stafford? Will he be traded to an established team that just needs a quarterback? Are they going to hold on to Matt Stafford? Are they going to address the wideout spot to help Matt Stafford out because Marvin Jones is in his contract season? A lot of different directions that you can go, Sheldon. Where do you want?
Yeah, the Lions are quite an interesting spot here. Obviously, they went with Jeff Okudah last year in the first round. And like you had mentioned, that Stafford situation is very interesting. I know some Lions fans really want to move on from Stafford. I know others really want to keep Stafford. And it'll really depend on who that new GM is there that comes in, what his analysis of Matthew Stafford is. If there's a specific guy in the class he loves, you could maybe be looking at a guy like Zach Wilson. But at this point, I'm going to actually mock Jaylen Waddle here. I think that they're going to sell themselves on his speed and his ability to create after the catch for himself. I think that's going to be a player that can complement Kenny Golladay very well in that offense. I think they're going to look for a guy who can push it over the top a little bit more, something they haven't quite had the past few years. So you're looking at the Lions being much improved as a receiving core, and it gives you some of that flexibility in case you're not able to bring back Marvin Jones, like you had mentioned. And obviously, it's hard to pass on DeVonta Smith here. DeVonta Smith's been the more productive receiver at Alabama, obviously a Heisman finalist this year. But now you're looking at a guy who's going to get taken for his speed and possible NFL traits, something we saw with Henry Ruggs happen last year as he was the first receiver off the board that year as well. So Waddle will be the pick here at 7.
Yeah, I think that's not completely out of the realm of possibility. Having Jaylen Waddle complement Kenny Golladay, I think that would really work. And you talked about that guy that can really take the top off of defense and burn corners. I think that's really interesting with the selection. You're not going to probably see that a lot of places, but I think that is something you can definitely look at as a possibility. I really like Waddle to Detroit. That makes a ton of sense to me. Now we're here at 8. We have the New York Giants. Once again, they're climbing up the board. They have an edge as a need. They need a wideout linebacker. Really want to address the defensive side of the ball, but there also is that possibility that they take a really great receiver on the board here in DeVonta Smith. What direction do you see them going?
Yeah, I actually do see them going with DeVonta Smith here. I think that it's a little early for all 3 receivers to be off the board at 8, but there's going to be a premium on these 3 guys. I think these 3 have really separated themselves as the best NFL prospects in this draft at that position. So you're going to see a little bit of a run here, especially if teams like the Eagles stick at 5 and do take Jamar Chase that early on in the draft, that you're going to see other teams, maybe even jockeying to make sure that they get their one guy out of the 3. So DeVonta Smith will be going here to the Giants. He really fills out that wide receiver room with Slayton and Shepard. He's an athletic beast, a guy who can catch in traffic, a quality route runner, sure-handed. And I think he's a home run pick for the New York Giants. Dave Gettleman will be taking this to really make Daniel Jones work. You're looking at Evan Ingram having a better year this year than he's had in years past. Now you go out and get DeVonta Smith. You're a much improved offense, especially when Saquon Barkley's back. And I think that's really the direction for the New York Giants moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you nailed that one there, because Dave Gettleman really wants his Daniel Jones pick to look better. Obviously, he wants to continue to aid the development. Getting Saquon back is going to be huge next year. They're going to want to make sure that they keep Evan Ingram around. And then they also land a really, really big-time receiver who could be the best receiver of this class for sure in DeVonta Smith. Him and Jamar Chase are really close in that sense. But I love the selection of DeVonta Smith and the fit with the Giants. And at pick 9, we have the Carolina Panthers. Obviously, they have a possible need at quarterback. Teddy Bridgewater has 2 years left on his deal, but they could cut him in his final year and save, a lot of money there. I think it's only $4 or $5 million in dead money that final season. So they could be looking to move on from Teddy Bridgewater, but they also have, pretty interesting need at linebacker. Obviously, they want to replace what they had in Luke Kuechly. They need to continue to build that defense. They added some nice pieces like Derek Brown and Jeremy Chin. But do you think they continue to build that defense, or are they going to the offensive side of the ball for this?
The defense does need to get built up, and I ultimately think that would be the better direction for them at this point. But at pick 9 here with Zach Wilson still on the board, I do think that will be the selection if the board falls this way. The BYU QB has been dynamic all year. Has been, really a late riser in this whole draft process. Not many saw him as a high-end pick coming into the year. Absolutely played well. Just played phenomenally in their championship game there at BYU. And quite frankly, he's been dominant all season. Only a few negative spots really for him on the record. And I think Carolina is going to be addressing that quarterback spot long-term. Yes, Teddy Bridgewater is under contract, but getting a quarterback top 10 to have him sit for a year is something we've seen multiple times. Patrick Mahomes sat his first year as a top 15 pick in his own class. Not that Zach Wilson will be Patrick Mahomes, but it's a relevant way to develop a QB. You really get a chance to see what you have, get to fix some of his issues and mechanics and tweak the way he plays a little bit and help him develop without having to really throw him into the fire. I think that's what Matt Rule and the Carolina Panthers do here at 9.
Something interesting about sitting quarterbacks is you don't have to throw them out there right away, obviously. And I mean, if they don't play well in their first year, obviously it's a lot to take in mentally, not just from a physical standpoint, making all the throws, but mentally you need to be up to speed. And sometimes an offseason is not enough for a rookie quarterback. So I love that selection with Zach Wilson. Moving on to pick 10, we have the Denver Broncos. Obviously they list team need as quarterback and edge. A lot of people see Drew Lock as not the franchise quarterback, and some do. So it's really interesting, the variation that we see. Drew Lock possibly could be replaced. I don't really know at this point. And that's something that Denver's going to need to figure out internally. But I don't know if John Elway can really say, I messed up on another quarterback. I think, once again, very well, he could look outside of the quarterback position because he is not going to want to admit that he messed up Paxton Lynch and he messed up, obviously, Drew Lock. So at that point, with that being said, do you still think they go quarterback?
That is the big pivot point here really for me, is if John Elway is willing to, take another gamble on a quarterback this high in the draft. He does not have the best draft record, obviously, with QBs. He took Osweiler, selected Paxton Lynch, and now Drew Lock. These guys have not really panned out in the recent history for the Denver Broncos. And quite frankly, they're going to have to make some adjustments for the QB position to work out. I think that is something they'll look at, but ultimately I think they're going to go in a different direction, especially with the way the board's fallen at this point. They're going to grab Patrick Surtain out of Alabama. He's a really good man-to-man cornerback, someone who's going to improve them. Obviously, AJ Boye's situation is in doubt there. He is suspended for the remainder of the season for PEDs. I think he was on the last year of his contract anyway going in. So Denver really needs to get better on the outside cornerback position. Surtain falling all the way to 10, a guy we've had even go as high as 4 this year, is a really good selection for them at this point. They're getting much improved, and they're taking a cornerback right in front of the cornerback needy Dallas Cowboys. So I think that kind of makes all the sense in the world here for the Denver Broncos.
Yeah, I think that's a great fit in Denver as well. But like you said, now at pick 11, we have Dallas, who is also a corner needy team. Luckily for them, Caleb Farley is still on the board, but they could go a couple of other directions. But do you think that they're going to stick and take that cornerback spot?
Yeah, I do think ultimately they will stick and take that cornerback spot. I do think they'll give Christian Darrisaw a little bit of consideration, maybe even Sam Cosmi, the in-state prospect there from Texas. But at this point, I think Caleb Farley is going to be the selection here at pick 11. This is right around where his range is for the NFL draft. He's going to be another quality corner. You put him across from Trayvon Diggs and really try and build up that secondary. The departure of Byron Jones has really shown a multitude of sins on that defense. They need to improve in quite a few areas defensively, and I think cornerback being the most important at this point. They have some edge rushers they've already committed money to, and now at this point you have to grab a cornerback to help that pass rush get home, give them a little bit more time to get to the quarterback.
Absolutely. I think Caleb Farley would be a really good selection for Dallas. Now moving on to the Chargers at pick 12, obviously offensive tackle is a humongous need. Also, they do need an edge rusher, possibly with the departure of Melvin Ingram. We've talked about that a lot on this channel. Is Melvin Ingram going to be out? And very likely, yes, because he's going to command a lot of money that the Chargers won't have for him. So they would either have to replace that or look at the tackle spot. What direction do you think they'd pick of those two?
Yeah, the tackle spot is a really big need for them. They really need to grab a left tackle. Obviously, they're even a team that would maybe even try and package a lot of their assets to go move up for Penei Sewell this year. I wouldn't rule that out yet at this point. But sticking here at pick 12, you're looking really between Kwity Paye, the edge from Michigan, and Christian Darrisaw, the tackle from Virginia Tech. And at this point, I actually am going to have them go Kwity Paye to get that fifth-year option on an edge rather than a tackle. I think that's a little bit bigger of a deal for them. I think that Paye replacing Melvin Ingram is going to be the move here for them. And especially since I think the end of the first round has quite a few different offensive tackles that are kind of bunched together. You could see a couple of those fall into the second round where the Chargers would have another pick, maybe be able to address that there. But here they get a top 15 player in the class in Kwity Paye, a guy with really good edge skills, can get to the quarterback and stop the run. And I think that's the selection here for LA.
I think you're right on the money with that selection. Now we sit here at 13 with the Minnesota Vikings. There's been a lot of debate in the comments whether they should take a tackle or a guard. Obviously, Ezra Cleveland's played really well at that guard spot. Obviously, on the left side of the line, they have Riley Reeve, and they've had Dakota Dozier playing at the left guard spot. So there's been a lot of issues, especially at that left guard spot, kind of a revolving door. So where do you see them going with this selection? Do you think for sure it's going to be O-line, or do they look to the defensive side of the ball?
I do think they're going to stick on that O-line here at this point. Obviously, the defense needs a lot of work, but they've spent so many first-round picks on the defense in recent years, going back to players like Mike Hughes and so on. I think that they really need to address that tackle spot. Kirk Cousins showed that he could move a little bit more out of the pocket this year, but it's still not like he's a mobile quarterback really at this point. He's going to be a guy who can maybe extend the play a little bit, but you need to protect him in the pocket there. And I think Christian Darrisaw out of Virginia Tech is going to be the selection here for them. I'm going to have them stick at tackle because players in the NFL draft, when they're drafted at tackle, if they don't work there, they get kicked into guard. It gives you that versatility. When you draft a guard, you're not drafting him to possibly try him at tackle. So here you get a little bit of versatility. Like you had mentioned, Ezra Cleveland's played very phenomenally at that right guard position. Yes, they need to address left guard as well. I'm not ruling that out. But if Darrisaw doesn't work at left tackle, you can kick him into left guard maybe early on and then give him a shot to go back out to tackle at some point in his career. So that's why I'm going with Darrisaw here.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the pick. I for sure believe in that as well. Now we have the San Francisco 49ers. Obviously, they have an interesting situation with Jimmy Garoppolo. Are they going to keep him? Are they going to release him and accrue hardly any dead money? And honestly, at this point, they also have a huge need at corner. Richard Sherman is going to be on his way out. Obviously, he said he is not going to re-sign there for whatever reason. So now we're sitting here with the 49ers. What do you think they're going to do? Are they going to replace that corner, or are they going to replace their quarterback?
Yeah, you're really looking at a tough decision here for the San Francisco 49ers. Last year, I had felt that they needed to address cornerback with their second first-round pick. They did not do so. And obviously, they're kind of set themselves up in a tough situation. They needed a number 2 corner for this year, but now they're also going to be looking for a number 1 corner next year. But at this point, with how the board's fallen, I don't think they'll pass on Trey Lance here at 14. I think that he's a nice weapon for the San Francisco 49ers to take. He's a dynamic quarterback, can move out of the pocket, can deliver on time, takes care of the ball. That's something that's going to be really big for the 49ers as that defense is so strong. And now you're able to grab him here at 14 and, save a lot of money on the cap by moving on from Jimmy Garoppolo. I think that Trey Lance is the selection here.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. I think that's really good that he ends up falling to 14. It's very possible that we do see movement in the actual NFL draft to possibly go up and actually get him. So it's going to be interesting to see, because we have some teams that need quarterbacks kind of in this range as well. You can see New England, you can see Chicago, you could see Washington football team. So a lot of teams kind of in this area that might have to move ahead of the 49ers to draft Trey Lance. Now we're here at 15 with the New England Patriots, and we've kept it very consistent on what we thought about the New England Patriots selection over the last couple of weeks. Sheldon, do you see them making any changes to where we had them going in the draft?
Quite frankly, I don't see that. They're getting a top 10 player in college football here at this point at 15. Kyle Pitts, a guy who's been absolutely dynamic for the University of Florida all year, has been the running mate with Kyle Trask there. And quite frankly, he deserves to be a top 15 selection in this draft. Absolutely dynamic tight end, can run after the catch. He's going to have a big body, good frame. And it's exactly what you're looking for if you're Bill Belichick. That's when he's found a lot of his offensive success, when he has high-level tight end play. Obviously, 2 really great tight ends over the last decade there. And now at this point, grabbing Kyle Pitts, that's going to be the no-brainer selection for the New England Patriots, as long as they stick around this 15 area.
Yeah, I think Kyle Pitts is definitely going to be the selection. I think that he adds just a different element to that offense that they haven't had for quite some time now. So Kyle Pitts should be the pick for the Patriots. Now we're sitting here at 16, and the Las Vegas Raiders have some interesting needs. Obviously, they haven't been able to get to the quarterback this year. They've had some guys, especially at the interior of the defensive line, rotate in and out. Obviously, they've had some injuries there. But at the edge spot, they haven't produced like they need to be. So at this point, do you think that they're going to try to readdress that edge position, even though they've tried to in the last couple of drafts? Or do you think that they're going to look interior offensive line? Where do you see them going here ultimately?
Yeah, the Raiders are definitely going to be a team that's interesting to watch. They have so many defensive needs. There's a lot of different places on that defense that they could really look to address here at this point. So I think I'm going to stick true to more of their draft tendencies based on what Mike Mayock and John Gruden have done since they got there together. And I'm going to mock Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah here out of Notre Dame. They have a real tendency to take players that were in the college football playoffs. You saw Clelin Ferrell and many others that have been in the college football playoffs, Josh Jacobs. They just tend to take from programs that are winners. And here out of Notre Dame, Owusu-Koramoah will be the selection. Does address a need at that linebacker position. They need to get not only more sure tackling, but they need to get faster. They need to have someone who can go sideline to sideline, impact the run, impact the pass. And I think that's what Owusu-Koramoah could do for them.
Yeah, exactly. When you actually watch Owusu-Koramoah on tape, he is just definitely the definition of a winner. Really competitive guy all game long. He's going to give it everything he has. Obviously, like you said, sideline to sideline linebacker. Really, really key in the run game. That's a big reason why Notre Dame has been so good defensively this year, is because of Owusu-Koramoah. Does not get enough credit for that. He is going to be the pick here at 16, like you had mentioned. Now we move to Arizona, which definitely have a need at corner. They also have a need at edge and interior defensive line as well. On defense, do you think they are going to go in those kind of directions, or do you think they'll go on the offensive side of the football?
I think they would love to grab an offensive player, like even Travis Etienne here kind of sticks out to me as a possible Cardinal, but I think a little bit too early in the draft at this point. I think they would move down to grab Etienne a little bit later. So to me, it's going to be Joseph Ossai here at this point for the Arizona Cardinals. They're going to grab an edge. Chandler Jones has obviously missed a majority of this year. Hassan Reddick's been a little bit of a bright spot for them, but some of his productions came, like he had 5 sacks in 1 week. That's not really, year out production at that point. Obviously, Marcus Golden there hasn't had the best year for them either. So they really need to grab another edge. Chandler Jones is getting up there in age. So grabbing Ossai gives you a long-term replacement, a player who can play across from him and gives you a little bit of leverage moving forward with Hassan Reddick as well.
Right. And there's some uncertainty if Marcus Golden will be back next year or not. Obviously, he's in the final year of his deal. So Ossai makes a ton of sense from that perspective. Now looking at the Colts here at 18, obviously there's some uncertainty with Anthony Costanzo. Is he going to be there next year? We've had some talks about him possibly retiring. He's only 32 years old at the moment, but he has talked about retiring. Obviously, we don't know from that standpoint, are they going to be okay at the tackle spot? So do you think that they'll address that tackle spot, or do you think they're going to look at the corner?
Yes, for me, I think it's going to come down to really what Costanzo ends up doing for his retirement. But at this point, I'm going to mock Jalen Mayfield there, the tackle out of Michigan. You're going to get a guy to replace Costanzo long-term. I'm acting under the assumption that he will actually retire. It's not often you see or hear rumors about a younger player retiring unless he actually is really, really considering it. So at this point, I'm going to mock Mayfield here. I think that Phillip Rivers probably comes back as the quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts next year. He's been a little up and down. They've struggled. They did not pull out that game against the Pittsburgh Steelers despite a big lead yesterday. But ultimately for the Indianapolis Colts, it's about protecting their quarterback, whoever it is. And at this point, Mayfield is the best option for that.
Yep, I agree. I think that's really smart to go with the tackle spot. Now we have the Washington football team who just released Dwayne Haskins at the quarterback spot. So obviously he is not an option long-term. Alex Smith, and they have Kyle Allen there as well. So where do you think they're going here at this point? We can take a look at the quarterback position, what's still here. Kyle Trask is still here. Mac Jones is still here at this point. Do you see them looking at the quarterback position at all at this point in the draft, or do you think they're going to build on something else, maybe pick up a wideout or a tackle?
Yeah, really for the Washington football team here at this point, with the release of Dwayne Haskins, quarterback is really the one that jumps out to you. The only long-term option there that was possibly going to be Dwayne Haskins is now gone. I really don't see Kyle Allen or Alex Smith really being the starter going into next year. So I think Kyle Trask is going to be the selection here for the Washington football team. I do think they'll look at Samuel Cosmi here to get that tackle, but ultimately Trask has played so phenomenally this year. Has thrown a ton of touchdowns for the University of Florida. Has worked well with his tight end Kyle Pitts there. Obviously, Logan Thomas has been a bright spot for the Washington football team offensively. Also, Terry McLaurin has been an absolute steal from a few drafts ago. And now you're getting a QB who can deliver the ball on time, on target, a good thrower of the football, and you get him here at 19. I think it's a really good fit for the Washington football team and an absolute need for them.
Absolutely. I could not agree more. A team that was kind of probably wishing that Kyle Trask would have made it to their selection is the Chicago Bears, but they are going to have to go elsewhere. Obviously, we have mocked Kyle Trask to the Chicago Bears a ton this season, pretty much consistently. But now they're looking at a different position at this point. Are they still going to go with a quarterback, or do you think they're going to address the tackle position?
Yeah, I don't really see quarterback now at this point. I don't think Mac Jones goes as high as 20, especially after Trask goes right before him. I think that the Bears would possibly look to move down if Mac Jones was their guy. I think Samuel Cosmi is the guy that jumps off the board here. But I also think that they'll even consider Rashod Bateman, the receiver out of the University of Minnesota. Obviously, Allen Robinson's in his contract year. He could be on the way out, so they would be looking maybe at a long-term replacement there. But I think ultimately they'll go with Samuel Cosmi. I think they're going to try and bulk up that interior in the front of their O-line, and Cosmi is going to be the selection to do so.
Yeah, I think that would be a really good pick for them. They have to figure out that tackle spot, got to improve the offensive line as a whole. For whoever their next quarterback is, it's going to be interesting to see how they handle that. Maybe next round they'd look to move up and ultimately go and get Mac Jones as their quarterback. But I think getting Cosmi here makes a ton of sense in terms of value standpoint. Him at 20, Now we're sitting here with Jacksonville once again. They obviously ended up with Trevor Lawrence. Do you think that they're going to need to address that offensive tackle position? Maybe they could look at tight end, corner. They have a lot of needs all around the board. Where do you see them going here?
Yeah, here at this point, I think they're going to wait on cornerback. They took C.J. Henderson last year in the first round. I think that's maybe a second or third round selection for them this time around. If you could take a look at the offensive tackles available for me at this point, I think that's probably where they would prefer to go. But with kind of who's gone at this point, I'm actually going to have them go with interior offensive lineman Wyatt Davis out of Ohio State, an absolute mauler, a guy who's going to be a lead guy in their run game. Obviously, James Robinson's been a bright spot for them. And I think this is a move to move off of Andrew Norwell's humongous contract. At this point, you open up some more salary cap space. Maybe they can address that offensive tackle spot at the top end of the second round with the 33rd or 34th selection. And also, as well, you're seeing here now the Jaguars get better offensively in the quarterback position and the O-line.
Yep, absolutely. Wyatt Davis should be the selection. Like Sheldon mentioned, he's a complete road grader. He's a guy that can get to the second level, get to the linebackers, and really spring big runs. That's something you have to really evaluate when you're looking at the offensive line tape. Can he get to that second level? Ultimately, when you can get to that second level, you can break bigger runs. So with the ability to do that and having James Robinson as your running back, I think that makes a ton of sense. And also, you get off that Norwell contract. That's something I've been really trying to preach to people. We have to get off of that contract. He's getting paid like a top tier guard, which he clearly isn't at this point. Wyatt Davis is the selection at 21. Now we're sitting here at 22. We have the Cleveland Browns, who came off of a disastrous loss to the Jets. Obviously, they felt pretty confident going into that game. They got behind early, and at that point, they ended up losing the game. They almost came back, but looking at their needs at the moment, Olivier Vernon he is currently in his contract season. There's also the linebacker position that they could look at. Also, they could possibly look at the cornerback spot. Of those three positions, where do you think they would look?
The edge is really the one that jumps off to me. Myles Garrett needs someone across from him to take some of the pressure off of him, prevents him from getting double teamed as consistently as he does. And I think, to me, that's going to be Azeez Ojulari out of Georgia. He's going to come from a program that's been very successful there in Georgia. And also, you're looking at a guy who's going to be able to get to the quarterback, help in the run game, gives Cleveland a little bit of a different element than Olivier Vernon, and a definitely cheaper option than Olivier Vernon has been for them since they acquired him from the New York Giants. Ojulari is going to be the selection here. I think that there's a lot of needs on that defense yet, but I think it's a little too early to go cornerback, especially with who they've taken in recent drafts.
Yep, Azeez will be the pick. Now we're sitting here at the Miami Dolphins. Obviously, they ended up taking Micah Parsons with their first selection of this draft. Now looking at the wide receiver position, they could look there. They could look interior offensive line or even edge. There's also the possibility that they do look at the running back spot with Etienne or Najee Harris. So do you think that they could possibly look at that running back spot this early at 23?
I really do think they could. I think that's one of their biggest needs offensively, just behind one other position. Ultimately, I think they're going to wait on the running back at this point, maybe grab one in the second round, just because of how I feel about their wide receiver needs. I think that they really need to go out and get another guy on the outside to play across from DeVonta Parker. And to me, that's going to be Rashod Bateman. We've mocked that in the past. That's going to be the continued pick here, a guy who's going to be a quality route runner, gets himself open in the intermediate routes. And that's something that really fits well with Tua Tagovailoa. He's a guy who doesn't really throw the ball over the top a ton, but he really nickels and dimes you across the middle of the field. And Rashod Bateman's going to be the perfect guy for that in that Miami Dolphins offense.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that selection. There's a lot of people in the comments saying that they want a fast guy that can, get some yards after the catch. But if you're able to have two guys on the outside that can absolutely dot you with their routes and ability to, ultimately just get open, I mean, that's never going to be a concern with fit. I think that having two great outside receivers has never hurt any team ever. So obviously Rashod Bateman, I think, will be the selection here at 23 as well. Now we're sitting here at 24. Obviously, Baltimore probably is a little disappointed that Wyatt Davis went off the board at this point. They do need a safety spot here. They need an edge. Also, they could look at the wide receiver position in a deeper wide receiver class. Where do you see them going?
Yeah, this is kind of an interesting point for the Baltimore Ravens. Obviously, we've seen them higher this year in these mock drafts, but now they do control their own playoff destiny at this point. Just need to get a win in week 17 to clinch a playoff berth. But here at 24, I ultimately think they are going to actually stick in that interior offensive line and go Elijah Vera-Tucker out of USC. I think that he's got a phenomenal fit there. They need to improve in that interior offensive line. They've had two really key injuries on the right side of their line. Their right guard got hurt early on in the year, as well as Ronnie Stanley. You need to address that offensive line for the way that they play. A very run-heavy team. Need to protect Lamar Jackson moving forward. He's their MVP type player, and the Ravens will do so here with Vera-Tucker.
Absolutely. Looking at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers here at pick 25, obviously they do have a possible need at the edge spot, but I think the interior of the defensive line is actually the bigger issue with Ndamukong Suh's contract ending at the end of the season. Also, they could look at the interior offensive line to really help protect Tom Brady. Do you think of those two positions, that's where they're ultimately looking, or do you think there's somebody else on the outside that they could be looking at?
I do think it is kind of between the interior offensive line and interior defensive line. I think edge is worth noting. Obviously, Shaquille Barrett is in his contract year yet again. It'll be interesting to kind of see what happens with him if they find a way to take him yet again, or if he finds his way out of Tampa Bay. That's yet to be seen, but I'm going to stick actually at USC here and go Jay Tufele, the guy that goes against Elijah Vera-Tucker in practice all day long. Ultimately, I think that he's going to come in and replace Ndamukong Suh. I think that's where they're going to try and shave off some money from their salary cap this year by letting him walk after the season. And Tufele is going to be the building block to move forward from there. You're not going to get quite the level of production early on, but long-term, he's a cheaper option and a guy who's going to do a lot of the dirty work in the middle for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Absolutely. Tufele is the selection. Now we're here at 26. Tennessee Titans, as good of a defense as they are, they have a lot of issues getting after the passer. Obviously, their top two needs is along the defensive line. They have the edge spot. They got the interior defensive line spot. At this point in the draft, is there a clear guy from the interior D-line or the edge spot that you really like for them?
There really isn't at this point. I think that at this point, the Tennessee Titans will maybe wait a little bit to address these. They are needs for them. I fully understand that. But here, actually, I think they're going to go with Terrace Marshall Jr. out of LSU. They're going to get another weapon offensively. I think that'll be kind of what we see in the playoffs. That's going to be their shortcoming a little bit. I think that their run game is really dominant, obviously, with Derrick Henry. But I think that they need to get yet another playmaker on the outside. Corey Davis did not get his fifth-year option picked up, so he is in his contract here at this point for the Tennessee Titans. He has played better this year than he has in the past, but I'm not sure if he's going to be their long-term choice at that wide receiver position. So Terrace Marshall Jr. will come in and be their selection.
Yeah, I really like that. And that's something that has not been mocked this season. So I think that's good variation there with that pick. Also, now looking at 27 with the New York Jets, obviously they took the tackle in Sewell with their first pick. Now coming back to their second pick, is there anybody that really stands out on the board for you for the New York Jets?
Yeah, there really is. J.C. Horn, he's been on there for a while. I've been trying to find a spot for him that really makes the most sense, but I think other teams have just been, a little bit more oriented in filling needs while there's still other good players on the board. Horn is going to be the perfect selection here for the New York Jets. He's going to come in, be that outside corner out of South Carolina for them. That's something they badly need. They've been starting Bless Austin outside. Pierre Desir was there early on in the season, got released, went to Baltimore. They badly need cornerbacks, especially in that division. Stephon Diggs just set a record for most Bills yards in a single season in his first year there. That's going to be a problem moving forward. He's still young. We had the Miami Dolphins take a wide receiver, and they have Devontae Parker there. The Jets need to improve on their cornerback position to compete in that division, and J.C. Horn's going to be a great starting point for them here at this point.
Now here at pick 28, we have your division rival, the Buffalo Bills, at this spot. First pick in the draft. They're looking here, and they have corner as a possible need. We've also talked about linebacker for them and tackle. Of those positions, which do you think is the biggest need to address?
I do think it is that cornerback position. I'm a big believer in the need for cornerbacks in the NFL here. You need to be able to cover guys. And now this is not even necessarily a pick that's going to help them compete in their own division. You don't really look at the Jets as a high-end receiving core. The New England Patriots don't really have that. The Miami Dolphins do a little bit after this draft here, but it's also to deal with a team in the AFC called the Kansas City Chiefs. They're a dynamic pass game, and ultimately that's going to be the team that the Buffalo Bills are going to have to get over the hump against moving forward in the playoffs for the next few seasons. So I think Eric Stokes is going to be the selection for them to do so. You're looking at Tre'Davious White maybe being able to deal with Tyreek Hill a little bit, but you still need another guy who's going to be able to deal with that pass game, and Eric Stokes will be the selection to do so.
Sitting here at pick 29, we have the New Orleans Saints. Obviously, they're a pretty complete roster holistically. Obviously, they could look at the quarterback spot here as well. That's something to note at the 29th pick because they would get the fifth-year option on the quarterback, but they do have some other smaller needs that they could look at, possibly a corner, possibly a linebacker at this point. Do you think that they address one of those smaller needs, or do you think they get their guy for the future, or do you think the guy that's currently on the roster is their future?
I do not see a guy on their roster to be the actual long-term future. I think Sean Payton likes the gimmick type of football he can play with Taysom Hill, but ultimately I think he realizes that's not what's going to really win on a week-to-week basis in the NFL long-term, especially once he's your starter and there's extensive film tape on him. I think that opposing defensive coordinators are going to be able to take advantage of that. I think Mac Jones is the selection here for the New Orleans Saints. He's really played himself into a first-round pick. Obviously, he's not ranked very high here on this board, but to me, with the production he has, I would not be surprised if he walks away with the Heisman. I think he's probably the front runner at this point, him or Trask. And ultimately, I think that Mac Jones going here 29, he might not be ready right away, but that's fine with Drew Brees. If Drew Brees sticks around a year and you get to develop him, really mold him, and Sean Payton is going to be the perfect guy to do so.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more with that selection. Now we're sitting here at 30. We have the Pittsburgh Steelers. Obviously, they have had some issues with the run game at this point. There's two top backs still on the board at this point in Etienne and Harris, whichever they decide fits them better. Do you think that they look at running back, or do you think that they're going to look at that offensive tackle position due to some contract uncertainties surrounding the Steelers?
The tackle spot is really important, but at this point, really looking at what the Steelers need, I think that they're going to try and save some money long term. They're going to move on from James Conner. They're going to refuse to pay him really what he's going to hope for. And I think Travis Etienne's the pick. He makes all the sense in the world. He's a pass catcher. He's a guy who gets yards after contact. 2 years ago, he led the entire college football, the entire NCAA in yards after contact, and also averaged 7 yards per carry that year, down to about 5.5 yards per carry at this point for Clemson, but still a really dynamic runner, a guy who can break tackles, shifty in the backfield, and he's decisive once he goes. I think Etienne will be a really, really good fit in Pittsburgh, and I think that makes all the sense in the world.
Yeah, I think it really adds another element to their offense. They just haven't had that since Le'Veon Bell ultimately left. James Conner has not been able to provide that. Neither has Benny Snell. So Travis Etienne is the pick here at 30. Now we have arguably the best team in the NFC here with the Green Bay Packers. There's a need at corner. There's also a need at wideout. Green Bay historically will not take a wideout in the first round. Do you think that changes?
I actually do not think it changes. I think that they're going to stay pat with what they do. They're going to stick here, and they're going to actually go with Liam Eichenberg out of Notre Dame. I'm going to have them take a tackle. Yes, they have Bakhtiari, but they did lose Balaga in free agency last year. The interior of their offensive line has been pretty strong. I think that they could be looking at a long-term right tackle replacement in Eichenberg. He comes from a winning program, something that the Packers obviously value. They are a very good team. They draft a lot of winners in the past, and I think that they're going to ultimately look to protect Aaron Rodgers moving forward. He's their big money man there in Green Bay, and Eichenberg's going to help protect him.
Yep, absolutely. Now at the final pick, the Kansas City Chiefs are sitting here. They have two wide receivers under contract next year. It's very possible that they bring a few of them back. Do you think receivers are a very pressing need, or do you think that they could look at interior offensive line, linebacker, some of those other key positions as well?
Yeah, the interesting thing here with the Chiefs is depending on what Laurent Duvernay-Tardif does, that could really impact their interior offensive line need. Obviously, it opted out this year as a medical professional to help out during COVID-19 pandemic. Perhaps once we move past that, he could be coming back for the Kansas City Chiefs. I'd love to look at the wide receivers here on the board at this point for them. And I think Chris Olave is really the guy that sticks out. He's going to be a guy who can work the middle of the field, get some run after the catch, something we saw him do with Justin Fields at Ohio State quite a bit here. And ultimately, that's going to be their selection, help out Tyreek Hill a little bit. As a receiver, Sammy Watkins hasn't really been the number two that they had hoped for. Now Olave comes in and fills that role.
And that is going to conclude our NFL mock draft. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Once again, subscribe if you did enjoy the content. Also, leave a like. It's really important to us that you do leave a like if you do enjoy what you see throughout our videos. So we do appreciate you stopping by, and we can't wait to see you guys in the next video.